but I wasn't scared. I was at the church. The door was closed. I opened it.
Welcome back to Hannity, just in time for Easter, a heartwarming blockbuster hit about faith and family. Now, the movie's called Heaven is for Real. It is based on a true story about how one little boy named Colton had a near-death experience. He survived. He said he went to heaven. What was it like?
Well, heaven is such an amazing place, and you just want to be there for a long time. I mean, I didn't want to come back.
Welcome back to another episode of Boys Bible Study. We are here once again, the Fishers of Men, your favorite boys. My name is Ash, and I am here with my co-hosts,
Scott.
And today, our very special guest, our big brother in podcasting. We have in the studio David Allen of Loose Meat. Welcome, David.
Hi, thank you for having me and for watching that incredible movie once again together.
Oh, it was so nice to see that film again. My first time seeing it since you showed it to us. God, how long ago was that? Like 5 years or something?
I feel like we watched it when it was new in 2014.
Yeah, that sounds right. Because because that was around the time I came to Los Angeles, and quickly, we all were watching movies
As soon
together.
as you came here, I had to let you in on the word that someone has been to heaven, and we have feet on the ground reporting from heaven.
Yeah. No, it was very nice to just have the good news right away, especially here in the City of Angels. So watching Heaven is for Real with you guys back when it was new always hold a special place in my heart. And you've actually done an edit of this movie, a full re-edit of this film.
Yes. When I was watching it, I was like, he has such a nervous breakdown in this movie, and if you were just to remove the part where his son told him he was going to heaven and you just have him telling everybody that his son went to heaven, the movie immediately becomes a much better movie.
It's so good. It's so ominous. And Scott, should we tell people what's going on a little later today?
Yeah, totally. We're going to be doing a live stream at 5 p.m. Pacific time where we will play David's re-edit of the movie, followed by a secret bonus movie.
Yes. So
you have to be there.
You really do. And this live stream is going to be exclusively for patrons of Boys Bible Study. Anyone who is pledged $1 per month or more to our Patreon will be getting the link to this live stream. And keep in mind, the day you are hearing this right now, later today is when this live stream is happening. So if you're interested, go to patreon.com/boysbiblestudy and pledge at the $1 level. You will get the link, and we will all get to watch the David Allen cut of Heaven is for Real tonight at 5 p.m. Pacific. Also, David, your podcast's patrons will be there, and I was hoping you would tell the Boys Bible Study crew about your podcast.
Our podcast is called Loose Lips by Loose Meat, and it's been around for kind of a long time now, 2014, and I feel like I'm wrong, I don't know, but I feel like both Scott and Ash, your first time ever doing a podcast was on Loose Lips, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We planted the seed, and now it's grown into this beautiful tree called Boys Bible Study.
No, it's true. I definitely consider Loose Lips our big brother podcast, So you've been podcasting since I was in fucking diapers, okay? So,
yeah, I didn't realize it was the same year y'all started was the same year that both Heaven is for Real and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out.
Yes.
Coincidence? Hardly.
I think not. Before we get too in the movie, let's talk about the Heaven is for Real Spider-Man 2 connection, because it is not a conspiracy, my friends. There were 11 appearances of the intellectual property you know and love, Spider-Man, contained within the film Heaven is for Real, and we concluded that's because this is a Sony film, and one of you were saying that Sony's the only one who owns the rights to Spider-Man.
Yeah, and I actually learned about this from Loose Lips co-host Nate. He says that so basically Sony owns the rights to Spider-Man, but because they got the deal earlier on than other Marvel stuff, it's a weird deal where if they ever stop making a Spider-Man movie, they lose the rights to it. So they have to always be making a Spider-Man movie.
That is so fucking stupid.
So Heaven for Real maybe exists in the Spider-Man universe.
Yes.
Yeah. Like maybe they had to get some shots of like a close-up of a Spider-Man toy just to like make it pass for a few days in production. They're like, oh, we just realized we didn't schedule a week of production with Spider-Man. I don't know.
It's like recertifying your unemployment benefits for the week, but you have to just like do Spider-Man product placement.
Yeah. Heaven is for Real came out April 10th, 2014. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out May 2nd, 2014. It seems like the tie-in promo couldn't hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if there are two characteristics we know about Colton Burpo, one is that he went to heaven. Two is that he likes Spider-Man and spiders. He likes both.
Yes. So actually, my next question, in order to get us jumping into the discussion of this film, David, who is Colton Burpo and why should we care?
Is this Nardwar? Who is Colton Burpo to me? Colton Burpo is a little boy with a symmetrical face who went to heaven, and in this movie, his pupils are constantly dilated, and his mouth looks like he has a warhead in his mouth at all times. And he was just a little boy, and then something happened. He was, I guess, briefly cursed by God, and he went to the hospital, and he did not die, technically. His heart never stopped, but he was on the operating table, and while that happened, he left his body, and first he saw his father, played by Greg Kinnear, formerly of Talk Soup, denouncing God for taking his child from him, and he also saw his mother pleading on the phone, and then he left the hospital completely and went to heaven. And when Colton goes to heaven, he wears a yellow shirt. You're issued a yellow shirt in heaven. And he saw his church, and he went into his church, and he saw Jesus. And Jesus had sort of like a bob haircut. Jesus did not have full long hair. His like hair was recently cut. And so then he sat in the pews, and he watched 5 angels approach him. And then he asked if they could sing "We Will Rock You," to which the angels, they found that pretty funny.
Yeah, and I want people to know this is based on a true story. Okay,
that they say that right off the rip.
Yeah, this is not just some stuff David concocted, or that just some Christian filmmakers concocted. This is a movie that's based on a true story. There is a real Colton Burpo who has been through these experiences and lived to tell about it.
Yeah.
You can actually see, and I'll probably end up putting an audio clip from this to sort of supplement the discussion of this film about his life. There's a really iconic clip that we all love of the real Colton Burpo and his father being interviewed by Hannity with the writer of this film. And it's just a really beautiful piece of video. I love it.
All right, joining me now is the director of Heaven is for Real. He also directed Braveheart, one of my favorite movies of all time, Randall Wallace, and the real-life father and son that inspired the movie. Todd and Colton Burpo are with us. Guys, good to see you. Describe the experience. I don't even want to taint it in any way. I want you to tell us in your words what happened.
Well, I got really sick. Had to go to emergency surgery, and during that surgery, I had a trip to heaven.
That video reveals that the director of this movie is the director of Braveheart. And in the Sean Hannity interview, he just cannot stop talking about how much he loves Braveheart and how much he quotes it at the dinner table.
David, you know what? We looked that up during the break, and he actually didn't direct Braveheart. He wrote Braveheart. So
He wrote it.
Sean
And he didn't
Hannity,
correct him.
For once, Sean Hannity got something wrong. We found it.
Sean Hannity said the word director and kept saying, "You know what? You're one of my favorite directors."
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Colton Burpo in that interview is really funny. Like his really hyper rehearsed delivery of this lie he's been telling since he's a little kid. And he's like, I don't know if he's maybe a young teenager at the time of his Hannity interview, which was done for promo for this movie in 2014. So I think Colton was like a young teen at that point, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, Colton himself is really funny. His dad is really funny because in the interview, his dad is like, actually, we sold 10 million copies. He's like so not humble about this like huge score that their like fake book has done. But then also Hannity is just unbelievable. Like his demeanor in the entire interview is so funny.
Hannity's nipples are so hard being around the whole Burpo clan.
And the director and the writer of Braveheart too. I mean, this dude's hard as a rock in this interview.
Well, also, I'm realizing now that this interview, because we watched the movie, then right after we watched the interview with the real-life Colton Burpo, who does make a cameo in the movie towards the end. But watching the interview, I realized that the movie contradicts what he says in the interview. Because in the interview, he has this weird logic where he says that when you go to heaven, everyone is in the prime of their life. They're in their late 20s, early 30s.
So you were there in your body.
Well, not in my earthly body. They were working on my earthly body.
Right. So, but it was the same. You'll look the same, relatively speaking.
Relatively speaking, if you die an old man or old woman, you'll be in heaven in your prime, like late 20s, early 30s.
But in the movie, when he goes to heaven, he's still like Colton Burpo at age 4, and he visits his daughter who's at age 4, when she really should be age advanced to age like 30.
But that's the prime of a Burpo life. Age 4.
Right, because that's when you're at your most economic value is when you're 4 years old and you can lie about God to a book publisher and make your family.
Yeah, his most successful book idea was at 4. That's why he's 4 in heaven.
Yeah, but you're right. No, in the Hannity interview, he very clearly states maybe my favorite line of the whole interview is he's like. In heaven, you're in the prime of your life, late 20s, early 30s. But you're right. Like, why shouldn't it have been like a Tom Hanks big moment when young Colton Burpo was finally in like heaven and he like opens up his shorts and like looks down at his fully grown penis and is like, whoa.
This movie would have been so much better if that happened.
Fuck. Let's talk about specifically this film's interpretation of the Burpo story, because obviously this film has its own way of conveying this information. So
yeah, the Burpo story is kind of like the Bible. There's like different versions of it, but they're all true.
Yes.
The movie has this angle where do we remember what Colton's father's name is?
Todd.
Okay, when Todd, who is a well-liked preacher in his town, when he first comes and after the surgery that happened to his son, tells his congregation that his son went to heaven, in the movie, everyone is completely skeptical of him and really does not believe him for 1 second, and it nearly ruins his career. But despite it all, he risks it all, and he overcomes by just plowing forward and believing in his son's trip to heaven, and eventually everyone comes around and believes in him. But I just don't think that happened in real life. I'm sure the first time he told his congregation that his son went to heaven, they were like, all right, yeah, give us a book, we'll buy it.
Yes. Like that's probably the least believable thing about the film. I would say even less believable than the idea that Colton Burpo has physically gone to heaven is the idea that like he told his congregation this and they were like, I don't know about Pastor Todd. He's really gone off the fucking deep end. That would never happen. They love this shit. Come on.
One of the members was like, "Oh, I don't even believe in heaven. What are you talking about?"
Yeah, when Todd comes forward with it, all of a sudden one person in the back of the church stands up with like a notepad like they're a journalist and starts interrogating him. And it's like, wait. Did they just show up to the church service like ready for him to like take a break and all of a sudden start asking him questions?
When he was in the operation, Colton visited heaven.
But you said he didn't die.
He didn't, but he saw heaven. He saw Jesus and angels and...
But how?
I don't know.
Reverend Burpo.
Todd,
Some of the hospital staff have said off the record that your son was not expected to survive. Use the word miracle. How would you explain that?
I haven't even tried to do that. I don't...
Can you try?
If he didn't die, how could he see heaven?
I don't know, but he did.
Do you believe he was in heaven?
I know he saw something. It sure sounded like heaven.
Lord, what's happened to our preacher?
Listeners, if any one of you has ever been to a service where people just stand up and start asking things of the pastor directly in the middle of the service, please let us know. Please let us know.
I think the Quakers kind of do that. They speak when the Spirit moves them, but this is like literally to like be skeptical of the pastor. This is like it's like him giving a sermon in like an atheist message board or something.
Yeah, he's actually reporting. He's doing this to like all of Snopes.
Yes. But also like there's a moment, just talking of the congregation's disbelief in his belief in his son's tale of seeing heaven. There's he has a meeting with the church board because they're thinking about hiring a different pastor, and in the meeting a woman who's like depicted as a pretty strongly supporting role in the film is a woman named Nancy, who's like the church pianist, and she serves on the church board. And she has a quote that I wrote down where she says,
are you talking about from when they have like an intervention with him?
Yeah. They have an intervention. But what does she say? She was like, oh yeah, she's basically like, heaven and hell, like that's just the thing that religions use to control people. It's like, wait, hold on.
Because it appeals to simple people.
No. Yeah. Okay. I don't like that how it makes our church a magnet for everyone who wants to take the brain out of their head and beat it to death with the Bible and then seem to want to show off how much they believe. Heaven and hell have always been concepts that have been used to control and frighten people.
That's one way to look at it, but...
This is someone who goes to church every single week.
Yes.
And is on a church board.
You're telling me you don't believe in heaven? Like, you're like, no, Christians just say that to control you, man. To control. It's like you literally serve on a church board. Like, there's no way.
Well, when all her pastors' stories are about Chronicles of Narnia. I mean, I can't expect her to know too much of what's actually in the Bible or not.
Yeah, when we actually see Greg Kinnear preaching, he basically does like Lion Witch in the Wardrobe, and he just like starts ranting about a unicorn who has its horn ripped off and it's pulled by a cart, and then there's like a dancing bear in a circus, and everyone's like, what the fuck are you going on about? And then the movie makes sure to like underline that this congregation is Christian, but like not the weird Christian, like, normal Christian, like suburban Christian. Because like there's a part where Todd Burpo breaks his leg in a softball accident, and he has to take a break from preaching, and so they have to do in a bunch of substitute preachers, which I didn't realize was a thing, but I guess it is.
Is.
It is, actually.
Oh, okay. So the subs come in, and then one of them is one of the like speaks in tongues people, and then like you just see them like Nancy shaking her head like, oh, what does this church come to?
From the prison ministry. He's used to captive audiences. She's from the seminary.
If Todd isn't back soon, I'm going to kill somebody. And I'm going to start with you.
Use an anvil.
So, yeah, they establish in the logic of the movie that there is a line for them. But
they're judging other denominations at that point.
Right. But no, you're right.
and it's funny because they're obviously idiots.
Right. But you're right, David, in that like the first, like toward the beginning of the movie, when we see an example of Todd Burpo in action, like as a good preacher who inspires people, he is telling this pretty inscrutable sermon about the lion, the bear, and the unicorn.
All of the lion's enemies have swept away his followers except for two, a bear and a unicorn, who are trapped in a cave with a lion. And because the entrance to this cave is narrow, the wave after wave of soldiers that the evil king sends in to try and kill them can't do it. The lion, the bear, the unicorn, they fight them off. So finally the king sends in a messenger. He says, look, the one that we really want, the one we're interested in is that lion. Give him up, and the rest of you will live. The unicorn, we're going to cut his horn off. We'll make him pull a cart for the rest of his life. The bear, we're going to put in chains and shackles, make him dance in the circus. But both of you will live. All you have to do is give up that lion.
And I actually looked this up while we were watching the film because I wanted to know if it was based on anything. And I think it's based on a children's book, but I don't even think so because literally all the links I can find are just quotes from this film.
Ash, I will say, until you just said that scene is supposed to be an example of Todd Burpo in his prime.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that until you just said that.
Yes.
Because when I watched it, it's such an inexplicable, rambling, and it just seems like he just didn't know where he was going, and he just is, adding in a bunch of unrelated things.
Right.
So it's really strange that in the movie's eyes, that's, him knocking it out of the park.
Yeah.
I think it is.
Him in heaven, he's always talking like that. He's got his Adidas track pants on, and he's just ranting about unicorns and bears.
It's true. And then, his son has this horrible incident. We'll get to it a little more when we talk about Colton, but basically his appendix ruptures, and that's what causes him to be near death. But after his family recovers from this trauma of nearly losing their son, he's depicted as having to leave the church for an extended period of time and then trying to come back and being a mess. But you're right in that this first example we see of him being good is inscrutable, and then he takes 6 months off of work for some reason, and then it's and then he tries to come back for one sermon, he hasn't prepared anything, so he's does anyone have any questions?
Right.
It's so funny.
Well, then also it's a central part of the plot that his family is struggling with money issues, and yet he gets a stipend from the church as well as this gigantic plantation-style mansion, this 14-room colonial estate that the church bought for him, and they pay him to sit there and ramble about the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, as far as I can tell.
So we're all podcasters here, so we understand what it's like to prepare for 1 hour of talking per week.
Yeah.
And where's our fucking 6-car garage and 14-bedroom mansion? I want to know.
It's coming. We're building our congregations. It's happening.
Yeah, the Patreon
just need more tithes.
Yeah. I need some more. We're gonna pass that basket around again at the live stream tonight. But no, it's one of those things where it's I said this during the movie, but listen, I am absolutely not a pull yourself up by the bootstraps type of guy. For instance, right now I am unemployed and living off the government.
Oh yeah, me too.
100. But I'm sorry, this guy couldn't come to work for 6 months, and it's his wife is I'm gonna have to get a job. It's damn, dude. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It's really hard to sympathize when, they live in a mansion in the middle of a field, and it's oh wow, I might have to work a job anyway.
Side note, kind of tangential, but this movie also, while Todd Burpo was out and they're going through all of the substitute pastors, one of them is someone who normally works at the jail. And the movie sort of looks down on that, where they're normally has a captive audience, and it's thinking about the fact that this person actually does a good deed of going to the jail and helping these people or trying to, and the movie's just looks down on that.
Yeah,
the movie totally shits on him for that. It's so funny. Let's talk about Colton himself, because his life story really drives the narrative. I mean, in some ways, I would say that his father, Todd, is the protagonist of the film, because he's the one whose life we see kind of get transformed. But
he's also the one who loses his mind throughout the course of this movie.
He's our Shakespearean tragic hero. We're slowly watching him unravel as the scenes of his life play before his eyes. But let's talk about Colton. How does he get to the hospital? What was his life like before that? What's his experience of heaven, and how does he act afterwards?
Before, we don't have a whole lot of info on Colton, besides the fact that he doesn't like it when his mom and Nancy practice hymns in the living room while he's trying to play Spider-Man. And then his dad and him howl like wolves, and his mom makes a weird sexual allusion to that later. And then he likes spiders and Spider-Man, and he goes to visit spiders. His appendix explodes. He goes to heaven.
Well, actually, I want to explicate the spiders aspect, because you're right. That is actually an important part of the plot. Like, there's this continual image of like him going to the zoo, and like at first he's afraid to hold a tarantula, but he loves Spider-Man, but he hates the tarantula. But then after he goes,
well, I think he's scared of the tarantula.
Right.
I don't think he necessarily hates it.
Right.
Here's my take on the movie of what it really is. It's not about going to heaven.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's about having a dream that's a big deal to you, and believing in your dream and becoming a more self-confident person because of it. Because before he goes to heaven in his mind, he's like scared of spiders, and he's like more timid, and he's always clinging on to his Spider-Man toy. But then after heaven, there's hardly any instances of him holding a Spider-Man doll, and he holds the real spider. And he's much more confident, and even when people are making fun of him, he's like, I know what I saw. I believe in my dream.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. You know, the character development of Colton throughout the movie is like very aspirational. Like, I wish, you know, I wouldn't get sad when people talk shit about me on Twitter, you know?
I also wish that everything I told my father when I was 4 years old and just kind of like rambling, he took completely literally and seriously and told all of the neighbors about.
Preached it to his congregation, literally becomes a preacher so he can tell them about this story.
I do want to point out that Colton definitely touches on like a Christian movie trope, in that he's like very much the perfect kid.
Oh yeah, the whole family is annoyingly perfect, as you pointed out.
Yes, no, until like stuff kind of degenerates with Todd, and you know, basically because he's too faithful, you know, he alienates everyone. The family is like so idyllic. Colton is like always has like a slight angelic smile on his face, and is like, the choir is singing inside and I don't like it. Like just saying like cute like baby things. That's just like so fucking completely scripted.
Oh yeah. And they live in like idyllic white person town where there's wildflowers growing and everything's like a small town, and he's friends with the town bank.
Yes.
And everybody knows everybody.
Yeah, the town bank literally offers him a loan just like on the side because they like him.
Yeah. On top of offering a raise from the church.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they're just fucking throwing money at this guy, and he's not doing shit, and he's like screaming about
we
his
need you to
son.
get back up here and ramble again about the unicorn in the cart.
But yeah, no, you're right. Like everything is so idyllic. I wanted to point out parallels to two previous movies that we've analyzed on this podcast. You know, you mentioned, Scott, during the movie, of the parallels between this and the film I Believe, which we watched the other month. Or was that in our first season? I can't remember. Christ.
Yeah, that was at the end of our first season.
Oh, nice.
It feels like yesterday because it's such a good movie.
Absolutely. And we watched it again for your birthday. That's right. I did rewatch it then.
Mm-hmm.
But in I Believe... if you're new to our pod and haven't heard that episode yet, definitely a good supplementary episode to this. But in I Believe, we literally have a kid who's like such a perfect nerd that he like wears like thick glasses and like a tie and is like researching God on the computer all night, and then like he can literally heal people. And we were just talking about the idea of like the kid's name in that movie is Brian. And we were just talking about the idea of like the Chad Bryan and the virgin Colton Burpo, because like Colton Burpo fucking just like died and then like just talks about shit. Brian's out there fucking making people's like legs grow back and stuff. Like that kid owns.
Yep. Yep. Even if Colton really did go to heaven, which he did, it's still hearsay. It's not really a message. It's just like a cool story.
Right. Like, what are you doing about it, Colton? That's what I want to know. What are you doing?
Colton, your silence is deafening.
Yeah. And that I wanted to point out, and actually now that you were talking about the David, that you were talking about the like idyllic small town vibe to this film, even though everyone lives in like $2 million homes, is
and I will say real quick, this movie goes out of its way to point out that Jesus is white. Like at one point, Greg Kinnear is like, "What did Jesus look like?" And then Colton's like, "He had light eyes. They were blue or green." And you're like, "Oh, thank God,
thank God." Yeah, if they were brown, then we would have had some ambiguity on our hands.
Yeah,
but fortunately, that was answered by Colton.
Yeah,
but in the first film we ever watched for this pod, Last Ounce of Courage, there's also a presentation of small town idyllic everyone knows everyone life, but like comically so, to the point where the main character is the mayor and also a pharmacist and also rides on a motorcycle the entire day. Like he like literally does no work and just drives around with an American flag, but he's somehow like the only pharmacist in town as well. It's very confusing. This film's kind of like that too, because everyone's a fireman. I mean, I guess there's volunteer firemen, but still.
Christians love firemen for some reason. Like I notice in Christian film, firemen show up a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, David, it was actually you who showed me Fireproof.
Fireproof?
Mm-hmm.
Fireproof, yeah, which is one of my all-time faves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we actually haven't done that one for the pod yet. It's been on our list for a while, but anyone listening, definitely check out the Kirk Cameron classic Fireproof about some Christian firemen. We get a little bit of that in this film too.
Yeah, this movie doesn't have the angle of Todd Burpo getting into porn or anything and then smashing his computer over it, because it's just kind of implied all the struggle between in their marriage is over financial issues, even though they're completely taken care of by their church. Mm-hmm. And I pointed out as we were watching it, the chemistry between the married couple in this movie is that of two people who are stuck in an elevator together.
Yes. But there's still that one scene where they like kind of make a sex joke. Like,
yeah,
where Colton says something about angels singing and his mom.
There's a couple.
That's true, because the moment I'm thinking of is when Todd and his wife's name is Sonia, by the way. When Todd and Sonia are talking, and Todd says something about like Colton said he heard angels singing, and Sonia's like us in the shower or something like that, and I was like, oh, okay, well, damn.
You ever mention this idea to you of hearing angels singing?
Not unless you're talking about you and me in the shower. Todd, these bills are coming through.
Yeah. She also said something like, I'm going to like hunt you like a wolf or something earlier.
Yeah. Well, they had to imply that they did it so that they could have the reveal later that she's pregnant again.
Right.
Yeah. It's also implied that they had sex just by the existence of Colton.
True. That's
which is enough to make it an R, I think.
Wait, do y'all think that their new baby, like as soon as she found out that she was pregnant, she named the baby immediately just because of Colton's dream, where his little sister.
We should add that when Colton went to heaven, he saw his little sister, who was, again, not aged to her early 30s. She was like a 4-year-old like him, and she didn't have a name because she was never named.
Right.
Sadly.
So your theory then, Scott, is that she immediately named this one in utero because...
yeah.
Well, also, in the Hannity interview, they mentioned that he had a younger brother named Colby.
Oh, yeah.
So do you think that at the end of the movie she was pregnant with Colby Burpo?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how you end up naming your kid Colby.
Right.
You're like, we got to name him now. What if something happens?
Right.
By the way, real quick, do you remember that moment where Todd Burpo, a.k.a. Greg Kinnear, is on Google searching near-death experiences right after his son comes back?
Yeah, he searches on Wikipedia the word hallucination. That's what his research went to.
Yes.
But you know what though? That really is like that's like a Shyamalan level twist in the movie because it's like, wait a minute, this guy doesn't even know what hallucinations are. What the hell else doesn't he know about? Like, did he never hear of a dream before? Is that what he's like, my son really went to heaven? Like, no, your son was asleep. What are you talking about? You know, when you go to sleep and you think about stuff that doesn't really happen in real life, like no idea.
I love that read of the movie because it implies that he himself has never had a dream. Like he just closes his eyes and sees pure blackness for 8 hours until he wakes up.
Oh yeah,
and he has just heard of the concept of dreams through the idea. That his son
there's a
has
part
seen
where,
something
like, when
else.
once he's Googled hallucinations, he starts to like lose his mind, and he just goes on this weird rant where he's like, "It's like there's a clock, but there's no time," and he just keeps rambling.
He's 4. He's 4. He's so innocent. He can't be making this up, but everything he talks about is impossible. It is a massive adventure that he's created. He's talking about Jesus, seeing Jesus' horse. He talks about choirs of angels and my grandfather. Take weeks or days, but for God, a day is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years, but a day. I'm just saying that's scripture. It's scripture. There's no clock. There's no clock. Einstein talks about the same thing. Some realities beyond time.
Why can't it just be a mystery?
What are some important plot points of this movie that we haven't covered yet?
Well, to go back to just the general skepticism he faces, and again, which I don't believe any of, is not only does his congregation not believe a word of what he says, but he feels the need immediately once his son tells him that he went to heaven, that Todd Burpo knows he has to go to the university and confront every Christian's foremost fear, a psychologist or psychiatrist who is embodied by this a woman with dark hair who is in a mostly dark leather room with a lot of books. So you know she's like every Christian's greatest threat and fear.
Yes.
And she tells him that she was once a believer, but once she watched her husband die, she doesn't believe any of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. You're not
Not what?
religious?
No. Is that a problem?
No. No, you might offer me a harder opinion.
So why do you say he went to heaven?
Because he says he did.
At the point near death, the body releases hormones that can induce a state of peace, even bliss. Our brains fill in the blanks. Christians see Jesus, Jews see Moses, Muslims see Muhammad.
Yeah, I read your article, but my son saw things that I can't really explain.
And she has the classic moment, which happens in many Christian films. In fact, we reviewed a film we love, Let There Be Light, where almost this exact scenario plays out, where Todd Burpo is looking for answers. He's like, this can't really have been heaven. I got to find a skeptical answer. And this woman explains to him, like, well, in near-death experiences, you know, we see reflections of what we believe. She says, Christians see Jesus, Jews see Moses. David, as a Jewish person, are you always thinking about Moses?
Oh, yeah. Every time I close my eyes, I see Moses immediately.
And what does Moses look like?
Well, he has blue eyes and blonde hair. But I do find it funny that he did feel the need to go to a university to try and find like some sort of rational reason for what happened. But then as soon as she starts to explain it, he immediately starts dismissing her and like mansplaining why she's wrong.
Yes. Also containing the classic Christian movie trope that atheists are always atheist for a reason. Belief in God is presupposed, and if you're an atheist, it's because of a reason that you have consciously decided to turn against God. And she was only a minor character in this film, but still, that story came to life in Heaven is for Real as well.
I also don't know if you realized, but I don't know if you noticed her, but at the end, she's kind of redeemed because you see her at the very end sitting in the church.
I didn't notice that. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
A happy ending.
Speaking of sitting in church and hijinks from Colton, one of you said that the real Colton was sitting in the church audience at some point.
I thought so.
Yeah, I thought so as well, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw him, and it's really hard to confuse his face with someone else's face because it sort of looks like AI rendered. Like,
dude, I just realized what he looks like. I just figured this out. He looks like the Dream Man The Have You Dreamed? The Have You Dreamed?
Yeah.
Go on your computer.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you all have
God.
seen it before, but go on your computer.
Have you seen this man in your dreams? Which is weird because this is all based on his dream. So he is the dream man.
He is the dream man.
Have you read about this man's dreams?
I also love too that they keep saying that this is based on this book where it's Colton Burpo with, was it Lynn something?
Manuel Miranda. Sorry, go on.
But it's just, I don't know. It's one of those things where you just know that the way the book was actually written was that like there's an adult in the room next to a keyboard and a 4-year-old just kind of like rambling and someone like trying to turn this into a book. And it always like kind of annoys me that like eventually that book comes out and they have to get like co-author with the 4-year-old on top of their name.
Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah, and hey, listen, I mean, they did pretty fucking well for themselves, though. 10 million copies and the movie deal. Like, I wonder how the Burpos are doing right now.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if they're doing good or if they are having like the lottery winner scenario where like they spent all their money on 4-wheelers like instantly and then 75% of them perished in a 4-wheeler related accident or, you know, something to that effect.
No, I think things worked out well, and Todd no longer has to be a garage door installer, nor a fireman, nor a pastor, nor whatever the hell he did in this movie.
Right. Yeah, he just sits back, goes on Hannity, lets the money roll in.
Can we please not skip over the fact that, so when Todd comes back from heaven, again, it ruins their whole life. But one of the things that happens is Todd Burpo is bullied by a bunch of firemen at a diner, a bunch of like openly atheist firemen. You know how firemen are. They're usually outspoken atheists.
Hey, Burpo. Hey, next time there's a fire, maybe you should tell Jesus that instead of walking on the water, he could just dump it on all your fire. Right? Oh, come on. You gotta see the humor in it.
And so they bully him, but then at school there's some kids who say to Colton's sister, do you remember what Colton's sister's name is?
Yes, Cassie.
What they say to Cassie is your brother says he sat on Jesus's lap.
Hey, Cassie, did your brother really sit on Jesus' lap? Did he ask for a new bicycle or a magic pony?
And like makes fun of him, to which she turns around and punches both of them in the face.
Yeah.
And then sits down at the dinner table and tells Todd and Sonia, and they love it. They love that she punched some kids in the face.
I think that's kind of a Christian movie trope too, in that the fact that there's, you know, obviously the message of the movie is very anti-sin, but there's still some sins that are like, but that was kind of freaking sweet though. You know, like just to add a little bit of edge to the Christian films, there's always like a little bit of that. In this case, it's Todd hears about how Cassie punched 2 boys at school, defending her brother's honor.
Yep.
And Todd is,
but the little bit of edge,
the
little bit of edge is like the husband and wife fuck, and the kid punches.
Yes, and Todd Burpo says to Cassie, got to teach you how to punch without hurting your knuckles or something like that.
Heck no. She's going to teach you to hit without hurting your knuckles.
Yep. And it's like, oh, okay, you know, hey, sweet but psycho, you know.
This movie has all sorts of conflicting messages, if it has a message. And actually, it has a very strange arc to it in that, like, the plot happens, like, he goes to heaven, and then he just, like, I guess he goes through his hardship of trying to convince everyone, which you just don't believe it at all.
Right.
And then all of a sudden everyone agrees, wait a sec, we do believe him. And then that's just kind of, the movie kind of putters out at that point.
Yeah. And still somehow an hour and 40 minutes. I don't know how they did that. I'm always blown away by the length of these films. You just could have done this in a tight 45. I'm sorry. You just really could have.
Oh, real quick, before I forget, there is also a scene right after Colton comes back from heaven where a journalist calls them up while Todd and Sonia are sitting on top of a fire truck, which I guess they're allowed to just chill on sometimes.
Right.
And Colton and Casey are just kind of like playing around at turning the horns on and the sirens on. And then they get a call from a journalist who says, "Hey, we hear your son went to heaven. I'm from Heaven newspaper. Here to write about heaven." Then they meet up, and then immediately the journalist starts interrogating Colton, and it's...
I love my favorite question, and I wrote it down in our doc, was she says, "What did it feel like to die?"
You were very sick. What did it feel like to die?
I didn't die.
I thought that was
what a thing
so
to ask
sick.
a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I think if I was their parents, I would ask her to leave at that point.
Yeah. Wildly inappropriate.
There are some other good like Colton-isms in our Google Doc. I have it written here at one point when the family's scared about money, they're talking about their bills. Colton walks up and goes, "You have to pay the doctor."
Taxes. I'm gonna have to get a job.
I don't want to do that.
You can't work any harder than you are.
We need you
You
here.
have
You're
to pay
working
the
hard.
doctor.
Of course, honey. We're going to find some way to take care of that.
We got to pay him. He helped me. I saw him.
"He helped me. You have to pay the doctor." And then like lightning cracks for some reason, and there's like all the papers blow off the table in a gust of wind. It's like very creepy, you know?
Yeah, which something I was talking to you guys as we were watching the movie about was the fact that their life is ruined by a medical issue that their son goes through, and almost has a leftist kind of slant to it where you should think like, wow, it's not fair that their entire life is ruined over this. Like, there should definitely needs to be Medicare for all, but like the movie's not really concerned with that at all, and is more focused on the fact that Colton went to heaven and what's heaven like.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up. That's a huge aspect of this movie that would totally go under the radar in just like a surface level Christian reading of this film. And that's common in a bunch of the Christian movies we watch. It's like they're so close to arriving at a critique of society that could be more structured around, you know, Christian values. And they just never get there. The answer's dangling in front of their face. You're right, David. Their entire life is ruined by this medical issue. Like they have bills piling up. Their account's going to go to collections. They're yelling at each other. And it's like, maybe God wouldn't want your health to be something that gets sold to the highest bidder. Like maybe that's something society should care for people, you know?
But he would want your trip to heaven sold to the highest bidder, and that will pay for your medical bills.
Yes. It's very strange. What are some other Christian films with like hidden leftist critiques? I mean, the first one I can think of is what we did last week with Suing the Devil. It could have talked a lot about wealth hoarding and the idea of taxing the rich, but it just like never did that, you know?
Yeah, it definitely was on the edge of that. It could have dipped into that more at any point. And they were pretty anti-big oil in that.
Yeah, they critiqued these big companies. They sued the devil for $8 trillion, never explaining why, even though like Jeff Bezos literally is worth $1 trillion. So it's like, does that mean Jeff Bezos is an eighth as evil as the devil? Can we explore this a little bit? But like it never does, of course, you know? Very funny.
Right.
Can we also just really briefly talk about the fact that Colton loves the song? He loves his family to sing the song "We Will Rock You," but not when it's on the radio. Just they all a cappella sing "We Will Rock You" in the car.
I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Could we sing "We Will Rock You"?
Buddy, you're a boy, make a big noise, man in the street, gonna be a big man someday. You got mud on your face,
Big disgrace!
kicking out can all over the place, singing, we will rock you.
And then also when Colton goes to heaven, he demands that the angels who he talks to sing "We Will Rock You," which they find pretty funny.
I'm definitely putting that audio clip in the film, but yeah, all the angels do this like ethereal, like ha 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 ha.
Angels, and they were singing to me. Can we sing "We Will Rock You"?
I just imagine them immediately saying after that, but Colton, Freddie Mercury isn't here. Because like, I don't know, just one of those, songs that like, Christians love "We Will Rock You." You know, it rocks.
Gary Glitter rocks.
Yeah. We were hoping that they would play, that they would start singing Gary Glitter's "Rock and Roll" Parts 1 and 2. And other films that are squeaky clean, or I'm sorry, other songs that are squeaky clean, but I mean, not to equate Freddie Mercury and Gary Glitter, but for completely different reasons, Christians wouldn't allow either into heaven. Freddie Mercury purely just because he's gay.
But I feel like Christians won't let in most musicians except for like maybe DC Talk.
Oh yeah,
like that's about it.
Oh yeah, DC Talk.
Maybe the Newsboys.
100. No, you better be like, you better be spreading the word.
It's just a specific moment that interests me is really early on, just to show that Todd Burpo is like a very caring religious figure in the community. We see he takes Colton to go get pizza and go to the hospital. I guess they just go to the hospital and pray on people sometimes.
Yeah.
And they go to an old man who's on his deathbed, and Todd Burpo says to him, "Do you have any regrets?" And then the old man says, "Everything."
I pray for you. Is there anything you're sorry for? Everything.
And when he says that, I'm like, what the fuck did this guy do? Does he like do war crimes or something? Like, what did he do?
He, Todd Burpo's job is he consoles everyone who was tried at the Hague, and he's the last person who talks to them before they die.
Yeah, this movie takes us on a weird, wild ride, and at this point, like, I really cannot guess what the message of this movie is, really.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the structure of this movie is very hallucinogenic, like similar to movies such as The Holy Mountain. It kind of like takes you on this very step-by-step journey into a psychedelic experience, you know? Like we see if Colton Burpo is our seeker, you know, taking the psychedelic adventure, we see his life before we watch him have the experience he takes us through, and then we see how his life has changed as a result.
Okay, well, to speak on that real quick, in terms of like him having a psychedelic experience, the actual experience where he leaves conscious thought and he goes into what his view of heaven is, and even the movie itself explains that he went to his personal heaven. I guess everyone gets their own unique heaven. His version of heaven, considering this was a Sony film, and these are the people doing Spider-Man, as we can tell by the crossover, they could have put a lot more in. Because Colton Burpo himself says heaven has every single color, including colors that you can't see.
Yes.
And yet when we actually see heaven, it's just like a regular, boring-ass looking church, except for one of the walls is missing and there's clouds. And then we see some like floating fireflies that are laughing at him. And it's like...
Yeah.
You couldn't do better than that. Like Colton explained he explained in his interview with Sean Hannity, he said that Jesus was so big that he could hold the world in his hands. So why in this is Jesus just fucking regular human size? We need to have fucking jolly green giant Jesus.
Yes.
In my opinion.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, the back of the church that opened up into a blue sky with clouds basically looked like whatever the first thing that pops up if you type into YouTube heavenly music. That'll be the video background. Same thing.
Yes. Yeah, heaven looks boring as fuck. I mean, I guess that would be your heaven if you were 4 years old and the only thing you knew about was going to church. But
okay, first off, that's not even fucking true. A 4-year-old's heaven would have fucking like Tonka trucks.
That's true.
And like dinosaurs and shit.
Yeah, you're right. This should have been a way cooler heaven. That's like my problem with Inception. It's like they're going into dreams and then it's just like an office with like some weird steps. And you're like, that's your dream? Like, you could have done anything. This is like a $200 million movie. What the
fuck? Your dreams fucking suck, dude. No, actually, a 4-year-old's dreams nowadays is just a never-ending game of Fortnite. Like, you just continue, you just play Fortnite over and over again. Like, you keep going into battles and winning. You win every one, and then you come back, and then you just do it over again.
It's like, and I stayed up late, and I didn't get tired?
Yes.
And there was infinite pizza on it, and I didn't even have to go to the hospital to get pizza.
I didn't even have to watch old men die to get pizza.
That's got to be a weird Pavlov's dog kind of thing, in that like he only gets pizza when his dad takes him to watch old men die. So like now, whenever like an old person dies, he gets hungry for pizza.
Yeah, later in life, he starts like smothering people in nursing homes with pillows just so he can get to the pizza part faster. Oh fuck! Oh man. Heaven is for real. What can I say?
I'm just gonna go through the list of quotes that are funny to me. Number one, when and please try and find the clip of this, but when Sonia and Todd are having a fight over their like financial troubles, there's a point where she throws a glass into the sink, and then like they keep fighting, and then later on she throws a coffee mug into the sink, and it is. You just got to put the sound in here, please.
You didn't come to bed till it was almost dawn.
I was researching near-death experiences. You all right?
It's fine.
Hey.
It's fine.
Right here. What do you want to talk
We
about?
need to make sure our children are safe and they're happy and that they are normal.
Yes, and normal. I agree.
It's just chaos, just sonic chaos. Yeah, they're when the perfect family fights in a film, that's some real shit. There's glass breaking.
They're lucky Cassie didn't step in. She's been taught to punch.
Right. Yeah, she could have just fucking clocked her. She could have fucking knocked her father's lights out and just left the room. It'll be like Out of the Blue, like Linda Manson Out of the Blue.
Oh my god.
Well, I would say that was a pretty thorough look at the themes and funniest moments of Heaven is for Real. We would, as customary in the Boys Bible Study podcast, we got to let everyone know our final ratings.
I would give it 6 burpos out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that this movie is very important because we have so little actual reporting from people who have been to heaven and can actually tell us what it's like there. I mean, you can hear third hand, you can read the Bible, you can try and guess what it's like, but we have a little boy here, Colton Burpo, who has actually been to heaven. He actually saw his grandfather. He actually knows that when you go there, you become 30 years old again. And I know it's a narrative movie, but I would basically call Heaven is for Real a documentary.
Yes.
It's based on a true story. It's shown just how it is in the book. You are looking at basically a documentary about heaven, one of the few. And these days, you're scrolling through your phone. Mostly you're seeing earthly hell.
Right.
You're seeing trash. You're seeing more bad news. But you put on this movie and you realize 2 things. You realize, number 1, heaven is for real. Number 2, Spider-Man is a great property. So for that reason, I give it 6 out of 5 burpos.
Beautiful. I completely agree. It's a great primary source. What would you say, Scott? What's your review?
Well, a great review, David. Then that sets me up perfectly for my review. I give it 11 out of 11 toy Spider-Man product placements. Perfect movie, really good. Don't forget The Amazing Spider-Man 2 comes out this May 2nd, 2014, in theaters. Yeah, great, just great movie. Heaven is for real. I can't deny it now.
Yeah, we've seen.
Actually, that reminds me. I had a dream about going to heaven.
I'm so glad that we didn't forget that.
Yes.
When I was like 14, maybe I was definitely a teenager. And I dreamt that I went to heaven and God was basically Aslan, the lion from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, coincidentally. And it was basically like a post-apocalyptic looking desert. And like the sky was like dark and like really overcast. And it was a desert, but there were just like kind of like gross puddles here and there. And God, who was basically Aslan again, who I was very comfortable with there. I was like, oh, I was like happy to see him or whatever. And he was like, what do you think, Scott? What do you think? What do you think of my paradise? And I just remember thinking like, am I gonna be here forever? Like in my head. And then I woke up and I was like, whoa, what if like God means really well for me, but like his idea of heaven just like is not my idea of heaven, and I have to be there forever.
Damn.
God gives
That's
you like
incredible.
a birthday present that you kind of have to grit your teeth and be like, hey, this is very thoughtful of you.
Yeah. For like forever, you got to be like, oh, yeah, I'm having a ton of fun. Oh, it's great. Yeah. I love it.
And it's just you and God, and God is like, well, so what do you think? Come on, so what do you think? You can tell me.
Hey, you like Guy Ritchie movies, right? I got a bunch of them. You want to watch Lock, Stock?
You're a movie guy, Scott. Oh no. Yeah, do you think in the movie that there was anyone who like genuinely believed in Colton's story, but they're like, that doesn't sound like a good heaven.
That sounds like shit, dude.
Like, I don't know if I can believe in this religion anymore, even though I totally believe your story.
Well, Ash, we haven't heard your review yet. What is your review?
I would have to say that this was technically a perfect film. I mean, I couldn't really find any fault with it. For that reason, I'm going to give it 14 bedrooms and 6.5 baths. I think that this film was. I think that this film was. The family in this film should have everything their heart desires and more. Thank you, Burpos.
Thank you, Burpos.
Yeah, that's a fair rating for any man of God. I
would say so. Well, yeah, David, thank you very much for watching Heaven is for Real with us. It was awesome to finally have you on the pod.
Thank you for having me on. I really love this podcast. I love both of you. I'm glad to talk to you again during these crazy end times, these revelations.
Yes.
These times that the Bible spoke of, that fortunately Colton Burpo provides us a roadmap out of.
Yes.
And, but yeah, in all seriousness, thank you so much. I'm talking to you during this really fucked up time. Makes me feel so much better, and I cannot wait until we can actually hang out again.
Me too.
Because this is a respite from just reading terrible, terrible news all day and getting bad texts and all sorts of things. So,
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you too. I was definitely looking forward to this in the very particularly tumultuous week that we are all having in the country. So a very fun escape. I hope everyone listening to is well, and maybe this provided an hour of entertainment during a tough week. Before we go, we do want to say our plugs. On the Boys Bible Study side of things, as we have said earlier, we're doing a live stream later today. Patrons of Boys Bible Study at the $1 per month tier or higher are all invited. However, if you want to hear more Boys Bible Study episodes, we encourage you to pledge at the $5 tier per month or more. If you do that, you get access to at least 2 new bonus episodes per month, in addition to live stream invitations. And our outro music is the song Oh My God by Mary. Definitely stream that on Bandcamp and Spotify. Also, check out Loose Lips and consider being on their Patreon as well. Do you have any?
Yes.
Do you have any plugs or further information related to that?
So first for the work, just loosemeat.biz. That basically has everything. We're patreon.com/looselips. And I think for just $1, you can get in on the stream or any of the streams we're doing. We just did our first one of the Doors movie, which was fun. The people in the chat had a fun time. It was a technical disaster, but we're fucking learning. So it is what it is. And we put in a tier. So we have a whole bunch of weird different tiers that we're trying with this Patreon thing. And we kind of, as a joke, put in that for, I think, the $10 tier, if you joined, you would get a phone call from my dad. Yeah. And we kind of put that in thinking that, like, no one would do it. Right. But now, like, 2 people have done it. And, like, I have to, like, my dad confirmed he would do it, but now, and also, I think we confirmed a 10-minute conversation, and I've never had a 5-minute conversation with my dad, by the way. So,
you should become a patron.
Yeah, if you give us $10, you can, for now, until I realize this is a fucking terrible idea. For right now, my dad's going to call you. So, check out our Patreon, and we're going to do this crossover thing for Boys Bible Study, and it should be a ton of fun.
Absolutely, and I should add, to be clear, Loose Meats do many things. They're funny podcasters as well as doing a lot of great video content. They have done a lot of work with Everything is Terrible and in the Everything is Terrible universe. So you've definitely seen their videos if you're an Everything is Terrible fan.
We shot a music video for the band Protomartyr. That was like our last big project. Completely forgot about this. It came out right before Society shut down. But it strangely, it went viral in Brazil, and so now it has like 400,000 views, primarily in Brazil.
Loose Meat, come to Brazil.
I did not realize it went viral in Brazil.
Yeah, so it was a weird thing where the band approached us because they love this like viral video of like a Brazilian public access show going wrong, and so they were like wanted us to recreate it because we have access to some like public access equipment. So we did a recreation of it basically, and the Brazilians loved that they were seeing like their sort of meme redone by Americans, and they just went nuts for it.
Check out the video for Processed by the Boys. Is that the name of the song?
Yep.
Processed by the Boys by Protomartyr. Amazing video directed by David and his cohorts in Loose Meats. From all of us here, myself, Ash, my co-hosts Scott and Julianne, and our guest David Allen of Loose Meat. Peace be with you.
And with you.
Bye.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I feel your love in me, it's coming from within. Oh my God, my devotion is so unwavering. Divine emotions when you